Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'm looking at the Green Party of Canada first, and then Andrew Scheer gave a speech, Unity in Diversity, about immigration, and we're going to look at that. And first, I want to let you know as well, and I don't have this, but we should look for it. I'm going to probably look at it later. Mr. Hassan had a statement prepared already before Andrew Scheer delivered his speech. It's so interesting what these Liberals are doing. It's so interesting. It doesn't matter what Andrew Scheer said. This is our statement. It doesn't matter what he said, because they released the statement before he spoke. It's so crazy. Anyway, first, I need a Velociraptor meme, and Dr. Jacobs is the one creating the meme. Here it is. It says, so if the Green Party stands with Trudeau, but they could also stand with Wilson-Raybould, do they really stand for anything other than power? Yeah, really, do they? Here's Elizabeth May on CPAC offering the leadership of the Green Party to Miss Wilson-Raybould. Hold on a second. We're going to listen to about a minute, and then we're going to listen to Miss May contradict herself again. Hold on.
I said to Jody in our first conversation, are you interested in being leader of the Green Party? I think that'd be a great idea. She said no. So I really don't think you can there's not a lot here to find that isn't on the surface. I'm leader of the Green Party of Canada. I love being the member of Parliament for Saskatchewan Islands. I'm looking forward to the 2019 campaign as leader of the Green Party of Canada to ensure that we have a strong voice that's respectful, based on evidence, and prepared to take on the other party leaders in debates and on the hustings and support Green Party MPs across this country, because the more Greens we elect, the better this place.
Right. Okay, so more Greens we get, blah, 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 right? Except not in the ridings of Jody Wilson-Raybould and Miss Phillpot. They want to support them, so they're going to run candidates and just tell them to, lose those ridings. How do you think that's going to fly? Is this somebody you want in leadership at all? Like, she doesn't even want leadership of her own party. Never mind leadership of the official opposition or, goodness, the Prime Minister's office. Okay, hold on. Here it is. Go.
That's a tricky proposition.
Yeah, you've got your Constitution on one hand saying you got to run. On the other hand, you're saying these are natural allies. We don't want to knock them
So the question,
off.
and it largely will, as I said earlier, it will be a decision that starts with the local Greens in those ridings. Mm-hmm. How do they feel about, for instance, putting a name on the ballot, but running essentially a non-campaign, no campaign, where the local volunteers for the Green Party say, okay, we're going to knock on doors for Jody Wilson-Raybould. Right. We're going to have a candidate whose name is on the ballot as required under our rules, but we're not putting out lawn signs. That candidate is there to say, there's a name on the ballot, it's green, but we are as a party supportive of these two strong independent members. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I will win this argument in the party, Don. I have no idea. I see the skepticism on your face.
Well, it would be kind of difficult to say to a candidate, you run, but we don't want you to win.
Well, it would have to be someone who thought that was the deal. Now, in the 2000...
I'll leave it there. You saw Don's reaction, right? Welcome to running for the Green Party. You're just going to be a paper candidate and you're not going to win, okay? And all of your support and all of the fundraising that you do and your volunteers do, it's going to be for Miss Wilson-Raybould. And yet, here's Huffington Post reporting on May 20th, 2019. This is not long ago. And if you forgot already what SNC and Jody Wilson-Raybould went through with Mr. Trudeau, I've got a series of shows for you to catch up on. Have a look in the back catalog. But here we go. Huffington Post was reporting on May 20th. Elizabeth May open to working with Justin Trudeau to keep Andrew Scheer from power. If the 2019 election ends up in a minority situation, but the Tories have the most seats, Green Party leader Elizabeth May thinks that the Liberal government should try to form a new government with support from other parties. In an interview with HuffPost Canada's Politics podcast, quote, follow-up, May said that if the campaign resulted in a hung parliament, quote, yes, of course, the party in power should try to convince the Governor General that they can hold the confidence of the House. And I want to point out that's what happened in New Brunswick in the last election. The Liberals held on to power until the House was called back and there was a throne speech, at which point the confidence of the House was not gotten by that Liberal leader, and he was then removed from power, and the PCs took their position. And it was a minority government in that situation, but because they didn't win a majority, the Liberals had the first opportunity because they were the sitting government to try to appeal to the House. And so that maintained their power until the House came to. Anyway, it was interesting, right? So note that could happen in October. A hung parliament could result in the Liberals retaining power longer until the next sitting of the House of Commons. So just be aware. Okay, anyway, back to this. The Westminster parliamentary system works, she said. You can't do that without talking to each other and trying to figure out what we have in common. Okay, I've reported on this before, but is that, I say again, somebody you want in power, somebody you want leading the official opposition, or somebody you want in the Prime Minister's office? I certainly don't. Okay, CBC News is reporting Scheer vows crackdown on those trying to game Canada's refugee system. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says he would restore fairness and faith in the integrity of Canada's immigration system by cracking down on those who game the refugee process and supporting newcomers who help boost the economy. In a pre-election speech on immigration policy, Scheer blamed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for eroding public trust in the system by failing to stop the flow of people crossing into Canada from the U.S. outside official border points. The Liberals, he argued, have undermined Canada's legacy of welcoming newcomers through a system based on compassion, the rule of law, and human rights. Quote, among the people I hear from most often on this point are new Canadians themselves, people who have played by the rules and arrived in Canada fair and square, Scheer said to supporters and invited guests from diverse communities during a party-organized event in Toronto. They are most offended at Trudeau's status quo, where some are able to jump queues, exploit loopholes, and skip the line. In a speech called Unity and Diversity, one in a series of 5 speeches on his vision for Canada, Scheer set the stage for an election campaign that's expected to see divisive immigration issues become key points of debate. He boasted about the Conservatives' past record in reducing processing time and backlogs and outlined in broad strokes some measures his government would take if elected this fall. Scheer said Conservatives would not set arbitrary immigration levels, but rather be guided on an annual basis based on Canada's best interests. Quote, that number may change every year, and I'm not going to get into political debate or worse, an auction about immigration numbers, he said. The number will reflect what Canada needs and, just as importantly, who needs Canada. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, I've got to watch this speech, because just dodging taking a stance on any number at all, how is that meaningfully better than Justin Trudeau? I don't understand. It's very frustrating to not have a number. And, well, I'm not going to diatribe on this. We're just going to look at Mr. Scheer's speech. This one, and just before this, at 9:10, he talks about the Trudeau government criticizing anybody who criticizes their government. He calls them racists or bigots or something to that effect, and he talks for about a minute about how the Conservatives shouldn't and won't do that. And at this point, he says there's no room for tolerance or extremism, and I'm going to play it for about a minute, so here we go.
Make something absolutely crystal clear. And what I'm about to say, I have said many times before. There is absolutely no room in a peaceful and free country like Canada for intolerance, racism, and extremism of any kind. And the Conservative Party of Canada will always make that absolutely clear. This goes to one of my most deeply held personal convictions. I believe that we are all children of God, and therefore there can be no inferiority amongst human beings. And that equal and infinite value exists in each and every one of us. And I find the notion that one's race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation would make anyone in any way superior or inferior to anyone else absolutely repugnant. And if there's anyone here who disagrees with that, there's the door. You're not welcome here.
And unfortunately, it doesn't matter. They'll still try and call him racist or intolerant or whatever. And I want to point out, in politics, I know it's not fair. I understand it's not fair. You're never going to get a fair debate. You're never going to get something that's on the level as it should be, right? But at the same time, muddying the waters by calling somebody who clearly is not intolerant in any way is silly, and especially when you win on policy. I mean, there's or not you win on policy, but there's a policy debate to be had, right? And if you talk about policy, well, I mean, that's more meat than what the Conservatives are offering, and that's long been my criticism. So at 12 minutes 50 seconds, Mr. Scheer talks about social justice. At 16 minutes 30, which is what we're going to go listen to now, and I've got about a minute, maybe 2. This is where he talks about setting levels for immigration numbers, and immigration done right is good for Canada, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's where we're going to start it, and right here, yeah. Good enough.
Third party understand that immigration done right is good for the economy, good for jobs, and good for people who have chosen to come to Canada. Now, I want to touch a little bit on immigration numbers, because I think in a lot of ways this topic has become a little bit of a red herring. There are those who say the number of immigrants in Canada that Canada admits is too high, and some have even made rash promises to reduce it without considering the economic impact. Similarly, though, there are those who say the number is too low and have set high targets without adequate integration services in place. In both cases, political purposes trump economic and social reality. As Prime Minister, I will set immigration levels consistent with what is in Canada's best interests. Now, that number may change every year, and I'm not going to get into a political debate, or worse, an auction about immigration numbers. The number will reflect what Canada needs, and just as importantly, who needs Canada. Now, this brings...
Well, that's weird. That's weird, isn't it? Like changing every year, not committing to a number, calling debate about a number, which is important to Canada because it deals with planning for the provinces, planning for the municipalities. I mean, this is a big deal, Mr. Scheer. You don't think that that's a big deal? You don't think people want to have a number to vote on? Right now, the Liberals are saying 330 up to 450. You're saying it could be anything. Depends on what we need. You can make a case for anything, Mr. Scheer. What number do you think Canada needs? And then back it up with something. Say, this is the report I read. What do you think about that? Something, really. And I get it, right? And I want to make sure, I'm going to go back to here. We're not going to watch the rest of the speech. But this is the laundry list of other stuff that he's going to do, right? There's do more to promote privately sponsored refugees. And he specifically says churches and mosques quite a few times. He says safeguard and emphasize economic immigration, which is similar to what Maxime Bernier says. Improve language training so newcomers can succeed economically and socially. Improve credential recognition to make it easier for newcomers to practice their professions and trades. Listen, here's a problem. Oftentimes, it's not the actual trades themselves that are the licensing issue. It's the language level. The English language is different than where a lot of these people are coming from. So a lot of the terminology used is different, right? So imagine going to your job and them saying, can you pass me the thing? And you say, the what? Oh, you mean this thing? Yeah, it's not about how good they are or what their credentials are necessarily. And it is sometimes about that, but it's not always about that. It's about how proficient they are at language. Imagine going to a new country and having no or very little background, or like just beside Duolingo, right? And like maybe really enthusiastic use of Duolingo, but still. Right? Imagine trying to get proficient enough to do your job at your level, right? Think about it. It's hard. And even harder if, well, I mean, with all of the other complicating factors. Okay, back to the article. Provide low-skilled workers a permanent path to residency, making sure wages are fair, and taking steps to prevent abuse of workers. This is actually the point that I got blocked by Michelle Rempel. I asked her to clarify exactly how many and et cetera, really try and flesh out her position. And apparently I was trolling her, so she blocked me. Figure it out. And close a loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement to prevent people from entering Canada at Roxham Road in Quebec and other illegal crossing points. I mean, this has been kicked down the can so long, it's almost parody at this point in time. Realistically, we should be able to control our borders. It should not be something we need to negotiate with the United States. And if people are crossing, this is having the reaction that we're having. I understand the implications of the United Nations and our signature to the Global Compact on Migration, et cetera, et cetera. I've said a whole lot on the subject, and I think Justin Trudeau's signature to that is not a good thing for Canada. It doesn't help us, and it doesn't help the people that are being exploited through human trafficking because our weak borders allow it to happen. It's a travesty, and it's awful. And people don't think about the consequences of these ridiculous things like open borders, and they think that they're helping. They're not helping. It doesn't help. Unbelievable. Anyway, getting off topic, but not really. A little off topic, but that's it. Mr. Scheer is doing speeches that try and solve problems that are cropping up in the broader context of Canada, but it doesn't actually solve the problem, the core root of the problem. And he doesn't give any pathway to solving the core root of the problem, and that is a number of immigrants, legal immigrants, because illegal immigrants should be zero, period. And that should not be a controversial statement. Zero. And if they come here in an illegal way, there's probably a reason. Zero. So that's it. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for watching. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca. because we are fans of legally vetted immigrants, and we are fans of taking a position and being firm on it. Mr. Bernier says 250,000 or less. Thank you for watching, everybody.